Welcome to session number, let's see here, 32. I have to look on my cheat notes to find how many I've got here. Session number 32 of Genesis in Depth. It looks like my Zoom application has been upgraded this week, so the Genesis part of Genesis in Depth is missing. Now, I don't know why that is, but I'm willing to just go with the flow here. Just trust me, this is Genesis in Depth. It's not a story about the moon. We're going to be starting out in chapter 39, where we left off last week. And the easiest thing to do will be to open it up for the sharing of the screen, because I've got some things to tell you about the tomb pictures that are here. There we go. And share. Let's see how that works. I came on. There's that tomb. Okay, this is the interior of a tomb in Egypt. And we're all together here. I guess I haven't introduced this very much. This is session number 32 of Genesis in Depth. I'm Dr. John McMath, and I'm joined here by my friends in Italy and in the Philippines. We've been doing this since 2020, the beginning of the COVID panic. And it's been a fun way for this large multinational group to get together and share together. It's been real fun. So here we are in a tomb. And I've forgotten which tomb this is. It's in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. And it gives us some idea of the way that Egyptians looked and dressed and acted. You'll notice that most of these people are fairly simply dressed. The men are wearing, looks like basically a kilt, kind of a decorated kilt. These would be servants who are getting their pharaoh ready for his burial. This is the embalming and the wrapping and the mummification of the dead. These are some very distinctive things that really are not easily mirrored in other cultures. What we're going to find with the whole Joseph narrative, going on into the Moses narrative for that matter, is a very Egyptian background. The backstory, the culture, the local color that adds just a bit of texture to a story is also unique to the Egyptian culture. Among other things, this means, as I was mentioning last week, that Joseph fits into the time before the Second Intermediate Period in Egypt. That period of time, period about 300 years long, was dominated by a Semitic people group, warlords that we call the Hyksos. These warriors came into Egypt and usurped power from the pharaoh. They defeated Pharaoh's army in battle because they had chariots. Chariots were introduced to Egypt by the Hyksos. Later on, the pharaohs of the Exodus would also have chariots, but prior to that time, there were no warlike chariots. There were carts drawn by horses, but there were no chariots. A lot of other things are unique, telling us that this is an Egyptian background early in the what is called the Middle Bronze Age, and not toward the middle or end of the Middle Bronze Age. It's a 500-year period from roughly 2000 to roughly 1500 BC, 1400 BC, about 600-year period. It's the terminology that archaeologists use. when we look at this Joseph story, the names, the cultural habits, the descriptions of people, uh, the descriptions of clothing, all fit into an Egyptian background rather than a Semitic Hyksos background. This is just one more demonstration that the Bible is being historical. It is giving us eyewitness accounts of what really happened to Joseph in this place in Egypt where he found himself. Okay, so chapters 39 through 41 give us the story of the backstory, really, of Joseph in Egypt. He'd been brought down to Egypt by the Midianites, the Ishmaelites. Interesting how the names are interchangeable in the Old Testament. Joseph had been brought down, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. Now, these are some technical terms, and the name is also very specific. Potiphar is not a Hebrew name. It is not found elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible or in the Hebrew language. Potiphar is a Middle Egyptian name. It's definitely not a Hyksos name. He was an officer. The term officer there means a very high official. He would be uh, elite in Egyptian society. He was the captain of the guard in America, and I know a lot of other countries as well. The chief executive, a president or prime minister or whoever, has a security guard. In America, we call this the Secret Service, but they're all very similar. The captain of the Pharaoh's guard would be the head of his Secret Service detail. This would be several hundred men who would walk around the palace with weapons, and their job was to prevent any harm to the pharaoh. Most national leaders have something like that. I'm sure that uh, Prime Minister Maloney in Egypt or in Egypt in Italy has a security guard, and the head of that security detail is a very well trusted individual and well paid and is very loyal and has a very important job. So the captain of the guard is not one who necessarily has to stay right in the palace. He will go wherever Pharaoh goes, and often he will go wherever Pharaoh is going to go. So his job is not merely the immediate bodily security of the Pharaoh, but the overall security of the whole nation. If there are plots or uprisings or rebellion fomenting in the provinces, the captain of the guard was expected to know about that. So his job is intelligence, prediction of the future, arrangement of his various people, his forces to meet any needs. Now, that term, captain of the guard, is a translation of an Egyptian word. There was no word quite like this in Hebrew until the time of David, and it's not related to this word. This is an Egyptian loan word, and we know that the Hyksos word for this chief of the guard position was a different word. Just emphasizing the fact that Joseph is early. The time period around 1900 years before Christ fits that early period. So here he is in Egypt, purchased by a very important person, an Egyptian, okay, who had bought him from the Ishmaelites, who had brought him down there. And verse 2 tells us the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. Okay, when the Bible says the Lord was with someone, that's the equivalent of our New Testament church experience of God being in us. In the Old Testament, God is not usually spoken of as being in the believer. Joseph was certainly a believer, and God was with him, and that was demonstrated through his prosperity. Everything that he did turned out well. He made money for his master. He did good things in organizing the house. So he was successful, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. House or household means that he lived in the mansion, whatever it was. Uh, he was not a field servant who went out and made bricks or something like that. He was a household servant, and he rose within the household because he was faithful to his job. Now, at this point, it's interesting to ask, well, what is going on here? Joseph could have stayed in Hebron with his father and prospered there. He would have been faithful to his dad. He would have done the right things. He would have grown up and been a good man in Canaan. But now he's been sold into slavery. He's been sold to this VIP who is using him for his own profit. Uh, and you wonder what is exactly going on here. So Joseph is prospering, he's doing well. Lord was with Joseph, he became successful. His master saw that the Lord was with him. By the way, that should always be true. If you have a boss, we don't call them masters anymore because we get to go home at the end of the day. But if you have a boss who has hired you to do a job, uh, the very best thing you can do, whether he's a nice guy or not, is to do your best possible work. Be faithful to God by being faithful to the work that your boss has given you to do, because in fact, God is in that. God puts us in the places we are. Joseph didn't arrive in Egypt by mistake. This didn't catch God off guard. He wasn't taken by surprise. There is something very specific going on. So Joseph found favor in his sight uh, because the Lord was causing all that he did to succeed. And uh, Potiphar noticed him. He attended him. And he made him the overseer of his house. Okay, the overseer is the manager. Uh, the uh, the term is oikonomatos in the New Testament. The manager of the household, and everything in the household was his to take care of. He put him in charge of all that he had. Well, Potiphar was off taking care of his business. Joseph had the complete management of the household, probably several hundred servants. There would be a larger area for the raising of crops, and Joseph would take care of making sure that the overseers of the outdoor work were doing their jobs. He would take care of the funding, the staffing, the provision for things happening in the house. This was his. This was a full-time job, and it's an important job. A servant or slave, in Joseph's case, he is a slave. He's purchased, but a slave who is put over a large household is actually, in his own right, in the Egyptian culture and in ancient culture in general, a very important person himself. And he is important to the extent that his master is important. So Joseph is a very important person here. Indeed, he's really quite the deal. So from the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, verse 5, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all he had in the house and in the field. And so he left all he had in Joseph's charge. Because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Okay, that's another interesting Egyptian thing is that very important people in Egypt always had a food taster. No, Joseph wasn't the food taster. There was somebody else who was the food taster. And the only thing that wasn't under Joseph's control was the food prepared for the master, uh, just because of the possibility of poisoning. Interesting, again, local color. It's Egyptian. Now, Joseph was a handsome man. The plot thickens. Okay, Joseph was a handsome man in form and appearance, and after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." I mean, she's being very blunt about this. She gives him this is not an offer, this is a command. It's in the form of an instruction. Here's what you're to do. But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house and has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Joseph makes it, first of all, a professional issue. I'm the number two man in this household. Your husband has great faith in me. I'm responsible for everything in this household. And there's nothing here that's not under my power except you, because you're his wife. So this is a professional thing. He says, "How can I do a thing like that?" But then he goes on and says, "How can I do this great wickedness?" The word wickedness is very really strong word. It's like the word that's used for the prostitution in the pagan temples. It's a very strong word. It would actually be somewhat insulting for Joseph to say this about what this wife was suggesting. This is a very great wickedness, and it's a sin against God. It would be a transgression of what I know to be God's will. I can't possibly do that. Uh, so she spoke to Joseph day after day, verse 10, and he wouldn't listen to lie beside her or be with her. He didn't even want to have the appearance of doing anything wrong. He refused to be with the woman. Uh, but one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment. And as you can imagine, he wasn't wearing much of a garment. And she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. All right. What Joseph has just done here is appropriate. That's the right way to go. You get out by whatever means you have to, and you run for it because she was going to be trouble, and that was obvious. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "Behold, uh, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice." In other words, she's accusing Joseph of rape. This is a very easy thing for uh, uh, for an unscrupulous woman to do. Now, I trust that I'm not talking to any unscrupulous women, but the men listening to this sermon need to be uh, mindful of the fact that whenever you allow yourself to be alone with a woman who is not your wife, you open yourself to the possibility of the accusation of assault or improper behavior. That's simply true. Uh, Pastors are particular targets for this, and more than one American pastor, European pastors have been driven from the ministry because of accusations. You just never are alone with a woman ever who isn't your wife. That's is just the way it always has to be. Uh, if a woman is in your office, the door has to stay open. And it's just very important. Um, Even when we're talking about people whom we trust explicitly, it's always got to be the habit. Anyway, so Joseph had this problem. She called to the man and said, "He tried to rape me." And as soon as he heard that I had lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. And she held up the garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, "That Hebrew servant whom you brought among us came in to laugh at me, but I lifted up my voice and cried, and he left his garment beside me and fled the house." Okay, so she's crying rape, and her husband uh, coming home, I'm willing to bet, knows what kind of a woman he was married to. I don't think he was terribly surprised by this accusation. That's a guess on my part, but I just have a hunch that this is probably what's going on. And as soon as his master heard the words his wife spoke, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled. He was probably angry at his whole situation here because he knows he's about to lose a very good servant. But he doesn't have a choice. If he accuses his wife of lying, uh, there'll be a big scandal, and it'll really be terrible, and it'll be in all of the papers in hieroglyphics. There's no good way out for Potiphar. He has to accept his wife's accusation at face value. So Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. Okay, so here's Joseph, and he'd sold into slavery. And because of his faithfulness, he rose to the top of his field. And then this stupid thing happens, and he's thrown into prison. Uh, and there he is, and it's a royal prison. It's not just your garden variety civil prison. This is where the political prisoners are kept, and prisoners that the king wants to treat badly. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. There's a couple of things going on there, and this is not the first time that these two terms have been used together. We've got steadfast love and favor. We've seen them both before in Genesis, but this is the first time I think that they come in together. Steadfast love is God's kind of love, chesed, H-E-S-E-D. The word chesed is less common than the more usual word for love, which is ahav. Ahav is love, affection, friendship, the love of husband and wife, of children for their parents, all those sorts of love. Chesed, on the other hand, is a much more restrictive kind of love. It's the kind of love that a mother has for children. We find that in the New Testament, the way the terminology is translated. Uh, but this is a strong, almost irrational love. It's used routinely of God's love for his people. And when we see it that way, we see it as a powerful connection that God has chosen to love, and he will not give up on that. Uh, so the steadfast love. The word favor is the word that we translate in the New Testament grace. It's the provision of resources that an individual could never provide for himself. So God is providing resources. God gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So the keeper of the prison is treating Joseph well because he's obviously a very competent servant. And this is all the work of God. So as this plot thickens, accused of rape, tossed into prison, God is with him every step of the way. And at this point, it's good to make the note, make the application here that suffering and bad times and difficulties in life are never just random. They're not a bug in the system that God has to fix. God works all things for the good of those who love him and are the called according to his purpose. So as God is working out his purpose in Joseph's life, bad things happen, but God intends to do something larger and better than Joseph could possibly imagine. And he doesn't know. He doesn't see it at this point. So the keeper of the prison discovered that he's got a real winner here, and he put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison, and whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. This is cool. And it's a parallel here to what we've already seen in Potiphar's house, because the Lord is with him. Even in prison, Joseph succeeds in everything that he does. He becomes the manager under the prison keeper of the whole prison, just taking care of business. Okay, now that's the setup for the beginning of the real story here. And this is the time that Joseph spent in prison. And actually, we don't know quite how long it was, but it's most likely several years. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. Now, we don't know what that was. The term cupbearer is Interesting word. It's an Egyptian loan word for um, the position is very close to the throne, very very highly regarded in Egyptian society. The cupbearer was responsible for choosing the specific wine that the king would have with his meal. And I don't really understand all of that at all. Uh, I've been around people who do know, and I have no idea why this particular wine will taste good with a meal and that one won't. I have no idea. Um, don't have a lot of experience with it. But a cupbearer would know all of the different sorts of drinks. The Egyptians also had a kind of beer. I'm not sure if Pharaoh drank that as well. I just don't know. But the cupbearer was responsible for that, for making sure, one, that there was no poison in the wine, and therefore he was a top security clearance kind of position, but also to make sure that it worked well with the rest of the meal. So fish or beef or lamb or whatever the meal was, the drink has to complement that. And it was his job to make sure that the dinner went smoothly and that Pharaoh was happy. Pretty important person. The chief baker, on the other hand, would have been in charge of the kitchen. His job was to make sure that, in particular, the bread was baked properly. And again, this is a top security clearance. He had to uh, be trustworthy with the life of the king, that there's no poison in any of the food. In addition to the chief baker, there would be a food taster, and some other servant would taste the wine, taste the bread, taste the fish, taste the various elements of the meal that were going. That also was this high security clearance individual. So the cupbearer and the chief baker, two very important people, got themselves in trouble, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them, and they continued for some time in custody. Okay, after a while. And one night they both had dreams. Ah, now we're to recall that Joseph has had dreams. You remember Joseph's dreams. I had, all your sheaves and my sheaves, and yours bowed down to mine, and then the sun and moon and stars were bowing down to me. So Joseph had dreams. Now he's going to get an opportunity to interpret dreams. Dream interpretation is an interesting thing. In the ancient world, it was the wise men who surrounded the kings who provided the interpretations of dreams. And this was considered a way of understanding what's going on in life and what was important and what the meanings of things were. Psychologists still use uh, dream interpretation of a sort to help people understand what's going on in their lives and what kind of conflicts they're facing and what kind of difficulties they need to work on. That's reasonable. You tend to, if you have a dream at night, especially some kind of a nightmare, it almost always has something to do with the life you're living in the daytime world. Uh, so, uh, telling a psychologist or a counselor or a pastor that you had a specific kind of dream is often helpful. Uh, Sometimes they can learn things from that. And that's more or less what Joseph did, but he was able to go quite a bit beyond that. So they both had dreams. And they were confined in the prison, each with his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. In other words, these are different. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw they were troubled, so he asked Pharaoh's officers, who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" And they said to him, "We've had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." In other words, they don't have a trusted counselor or wise man who can help them with this. And they're worried about it. They're not sure what these dreams mean. And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" Ah, there's the foreshadowing. Okay. Joseph is going a step beyond the purely secular ability to read what's going on in a dream. He is making the point that God is the giver of dreams and the interpretations belong to God. And Joseph feels he has a close enough walk with God that he should be able to interpret dreams. Now, I'm not sure where he got this idea. His own dreams seem to have gotten him in nothing but trouble. As Joseph's dream was eventually his whole family bowing down to him. That didn't sit well with the family. Uh, but Joseph says, "Tell me the dream." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine were three branches, and as soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Okay, sounds good. And Joseph said to him, "This is its interpretation." Honestly, I don't know how Joseph would have figured this out unless God had given him this. He said, "This is the interpretation. The three branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hands as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and do me the kindness to mention to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing, and that they should put me into the pit." The term "pit" there, very strong word. A description of a prison is more of a cave or a hole in the ground than anything else. Not pretty. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were three cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head." Okay, now we've got birds. Okay, and Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation. The three baskets are 3 days." And the baker is thinking, so far so good. "In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." Well, no, that's not good at all. The humiliation of being beheaded and then hung on a tree is fairly extreme. Whatever this man had done must have been awful. On the third day, which just happened to be Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Okay, so everything looks like it's coming up roses, and Joseph gets 1 for 2 with good results. He's accurate in both dreams, but of course the second one is not not a very good dream for the baker. The cupbearer is restored. The chief baker is hanged for whatever his sins might have been. But the chief cupbearer did not remember. That is, it slipped his mind. He forgot. Two different words there. The one is a kind of passive. It slipped his mind. To forget is more of a deliberate thing. You just walk away from it. It didn't slip your mind. It's gone now, and you had a part in it. So the chief cupbearer goes on about his life, and Joseph, meanwhile, is back in prison. This this just isn't this isn't working out. So Joseph says, "Well, back in Canaan, I had some dreams, and I know that those dreams were from God, and I know that I interpreted them correctly. My family is going to bow down to me, and yet that didn't work out. I ended up sold into slavery, and so I tried to make Potiphar's dreams come true, but in the end, I just got in trouble, got thrown in prison. This is not good. I interpreted some dreams for these guys, and now I'm in trouble again. Here I am back in prison. How can God be in a thing like this? How can God do this to me?" Um, After 2 whole years, this is the beginning of chapter 41. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh had some dreams. There's those dreams again. And he was standing by the Nile, and behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and then he fell asleep again, and had a second dream. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh woke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for all of the magicians of Egypt and all of its wise men. Okay, the magicians would try to use various kinds of magic, divination or whatnot, in order to get a message from the gods. The wise men were learned in all the arts of the Egyptians. This would be like a counselor or a cabinet member today. Guys, listen, I've had this bad dream, and here it is, and can you help me understand what's going? And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but this is verse 8, there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Okay, same story. We've had this dream and we can't interpret it. There's none to interpret this dream. So the chief cupbearer, who is, as you'll recall, right beside Pharaoh most of the time, said to Pharaoh, "I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, we dreamed on the same night, he and I having a dream with its own interpretation. There was a young Hebrew there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. As he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged." And Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit When he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came into Pharaoh. Now, he shaved himself. That would be uh, all over arms, legs, head, everything. The Egyptians typically went without body hair and they wore wigs. So in this tomb painting you see in the background, everybody has either a hat on or a wig. The Sometimes it looks like some weird kind of hat, but we believe it was always wigs, and they would pour perfume on the wig so that they wouldn't smell so bad. Egypt is really hot, and uh, you can imagine a whole bunch of people in a hot place together. It gets kind of rank. So the perfume and the shaving and the formal clothing that Joseph would wear for going in. Uh, he came in before the Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream. No one can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that you can hear a dream and then you can interpret it." And Joseph said, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Again, this says something about Joseph's humility. This is really a good thing that Joseph doesn't have pride that this particular ability is just his own personal thing. He recognizes that this comes from God. So we see it developing. And the Pharaoh said, "Behold, this is my dream. I was standing in the banks of the Nile, 7 cows, a really nice one, and then 7 other cows that ate the others. The thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows." Then verse 31, when they'd been eaten, no one would have known that they had eaten them. They were still as ugly as at the beginning. This is awful. Then I awoke. Also in my dream saw 7 ears on one stalk, full and good, and then 7 ears withered and thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, now this is the key to this chapter. The dreams of the Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The difference between Joseph's dream interpretations and the sort of dream interpretation that a modern counselor, pastor, whatever might do, is that instead of looking at your present day problems, the troubles of the day, and helping you work out a solution for that, Joseph is actually predicting the future. The dreams of the Old Testament, particularly the prophets, uh, are often a vehicle for God's prediction of the future, his prophecy. So later on, we're going to get a very similar story in the book of Daniel. Here's Joseph in prison, working his way up in the king's society. Daniel does the same thing 1,500 years later in Babylon, in court, interpreting dreams. And again, the dreams are predictive of what God will do in the future. So the 7 good cows are 7 years. 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty, blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout the land of Egypt, but after them will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow. for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and a wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. You can see it coming. I mean, this is coming. So the prediction is of a boom and bust cycle. Everything is going to go very well for a while, and then we're going into a 7-year period of famine. This is not unheard of in the Middle East, in lands bordering the great Egyptian and Saudi deserts. It was not uncommon for the weather to shift just enough that what little rain comes down stops, and that the crops that were predictable don't produce nearly what they ought to. This is very common. Sometimes this would be because of a lack of rain. Sometimes it was associated with locusts who would come and eat everything. We're not sure exactly what the problem is this time, but there's going to be 7 years of plenty in all of the Middle East, most likely, because the weather system is the same in all of the regions surrounding the Eastern Mediterranean. The Mediterranean itself provides the humidity for rain and good crops, and the desert provides the dryness for a famine. And when these shift back and forth, they cause this kind of trouble. In modern societies, technology makes it possible to survive from a good year through a bad year and back into a good year. Um, Pumps for wells and uh, 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 various ways of keeping food that allows the producers to even things out. It's a whole different thing today. It doesn't. This isn't as common. But the lean years and then the fat years. So find a discerning and a wise man. Discerning means someone who's able to tell what's going on, who's able to put together the pieces and understand a big picture. Wisdom is the ability to look at specific problems from God's point of view. The Bible is all about uh, developing discernment and wisdom. It's uh, the process of learning how to understand a problem and then discovering God's take on that problem, how to solve it. So Joseph goes on, let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. Let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. The food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. Fairly simple plan. If you know there's a famine coming, but you know there's some good years that will be before that, take the surplus of those years, store it somewhere safe against the likelihood that there's a famine coming. And actually, that should be common sense. Pharaoh should have known by himself that when there is plenty to eat, that means that sooner or later there'll be a famine. Uh, but at any rate, this proposal seemed to surprise Pharaoh. He hadn't considered such a thing, which tells us really rather a lot about Pharaoh. And all of the servants also thought this was a good idea. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? And then Pharaoh, it's like an aha moment. Like we've all got it by this time. But Pharaoh is just now catching up, and it dawns on him Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all of this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house." Here it is again. So Joseph is sold into slavery, becomes the head of the household. Thrown into prison, becomes the head of the prison. Thrown before the Pharaoh, he becomes the head of Egypt. Okay, Joseph is going to have the position of vizier, the number two in Egypt. Uh, and Pharaoh said, "You shall be over my house, and all of my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." Verse 41, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Behold, I've set you over all the land of Egypt." And then Pharaoh took the signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot. This is a horse-drawn cart, not a war chariot. And they called out before him, "Bow the knee." Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. So a signet ring is actually the king's signature. There's a scandal in America right now about a president who was rarely in the office, and so his associates in the president's office used an automatic machine to sign his signature. That's like having the king's signet ring. Okay, same thing. If a servant were to do such a thing without authorization, that's a really, really bad move. That's really bad. And Joseph was given the authorization. He was given the ring. And any document he sealed would have the king's authority. The linen garments would stand out like the multicolored coat that he'd had back in Canaan. His gold chain about the neck would be another sign of his position. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-paneah, and he gave him in marriage to Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Uh, Again, this is fascinating. Throughout all of the Old Testament, we see beginning with Abraham, there's a mixed bloodline. People say, how can we possibly believe that the modern Israelis are the descendants of the ancient Israelites when there's been so much intermarriage and all of that? Well, this was happening from the beginning. Good guys and bad guys both. We see Jacob, we see Isaac, Abraham married whatever her name was. When it was Isaac's term, Rebecca was not an Israelite. She was an Aramean. The same is true of Rachel and Leah, and the servant girls wherever they came from. So the sons of Judah were already 1/4 Abrahamic. They have just is watered down more and more. So here is Joseph. He'll be marrying an Egyptian girl, Asenath, and he'll have two sons from that, Manasseh and Ephraim, who will become on their own tribes within Egypt. We call them the Joseph tribes. So the plot continues to thicken. So Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of, of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He went out from the presence of Pharaoh, went through all the land. During the 7 painful years, the plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly, And he gathered up all the food of those 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt, put the food in the store cities, and he put every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, a daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. The name of one was Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget my hardship. The name of the other, Ephraim, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Okay, Joseph doesn't yet know quite what this is for, but he knows that God is doing a good thing, and he's properly, I believe, thankful. So the 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine had begun. As Joseph had said, there was famine in all of the land, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said, Go to Joseph, do as he tells you. So when the famine had spread over the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe. Moreover, all the earth came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. Now, all the earth means the whole Middle East, probably uh, the more or less fertile lands of North Africa, the western part of Saudi Arabia, up the Fertile Crescent as far as Mesopotamia. It's hard to know if people as far away as Mesopotamia would come, but that would include all the earth in those days. Okay, so what we've got so far is the setup for the really key part of the story, which will come next week, when Jacob's sons come to Egypt looking for food and end up finding a place to live for 430 years. And that's what we'll do next. We'll, oh my, how am I going to make this happen? See if I can make this go. Oh, goodness. I do not have a. Okay, I'm going to kill this. There I am. I hate killing that, but that's how this one had to happen. Thanks everybody for hanging on here. I'm having an interesting time with my equipment here. Let's see if I can unmute. There we go. So we can say hi to everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. It's good to see everybody. I see lots here today. Palermo is there, of course. Hi, Roger. No, yeah, right, Christy and Dante is there. Dale is here. Yeah, okay. And Como is here. I don't see Brother Joel. Where's Brother Joel? I know, and June is there. Yeah, we're all here. It's good to see everybody. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place. I think we've got one more week that the Philippines will be coming on at 3:30 in the morning, but the rest of us will all be at the correct time. So bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you next time. Ciao,
Thank
ciao.
you, Dr. Jan.
Love
Grazie.
Thank
y'all.
you.
Okay, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Grazie.
Love it.